Hi, and welcome back to Reddit Confessions. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about the moment someone thinks they've won, right before everything crashes down around them. There were 6 seconds of silence. 6 seconds between me opening the door and realizing what I was looking at. 6 seconds where time didn't move, where I stood there holding a grocery bag full of melting ice cream and ground turkey, while the sound of their laughter drifted from upstairs like it belonged in someone else's house. And then, like a badly written play, he walked out of my bedroom, shirtless, wearing my socks. I should have screamed. I should have thrown something. But all I said was, "Seriously?" He looked me straight in the face, smirked like he was stepping out of some low-budget commercial, and said the words that still echo in my spine. "She's mine now." Behind him, my wife, ex-wife in training, peeked out with a bedsheet barely trying to hide anything. But I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I smiled. Calm, almost polite. "Your wife?" I said, "saw the video." And that wiped the smirk off his face faster than a slap. Let me rewind. Not to the wedding, not to our first date, not to how perfect she seemed in the beginning. No, that part doesn't matter now. What matters is what happened 3 nights before this, when I couldn't sleep and accidentally connected to a Bluetooth speaker she forgot to unplug. I was in the garage, scrolling through emails, when her speaker lit up on my device list. Out of habit, I tapped it, and what I heard: moans, breathless giggles, a voice that didn't belong to me. "Say hi to your husband," the guy whispered. "He's probably folding laundry right now," she replied, laughing breathlessly. I sat there in the dark, hands shaking, staring at the concrete floor as their little audio theater played out live. She had no idea her speaker was on. She had no idea I was listening from 20 feet away. But I didn't burst in. I didn't storm upstairs. I just hit record. Then I did something I never imagined myself doing. I found his wife. Her Instagram wasn't even private. All it took was one photo. The same guy, wearing the same watch, kissing a woman at some cheesy pumpkin patch. I messaged her anonymously. No threats. No anger. Just, "You should hear this. I think it involves your husband." I sent the file. She replied within an hour. "Thank you. I knew it." And she didn't stop there. She sent it to her husband's employer, to his mother, and most importantly, she told me she'd pretend not to know anything until the perfect moment. I didn't even have to ask. She wanted revenge as much as I wanted silence. So, back to that moment in my hallway, when he said, "She's mine now," and I said, "Your wife saw the video." He looked like someone had dropped a brick through his brain. I didn't stay to watch the panic set in. I just walked past him, dropped the grocery bag on the counter, and grabbed my headphones. Let them fight it out upstairs. I was done being the quiet guy. But I wasn't done watching. Because the next day, his wife showed up at our house. And what she brought with her changed everything. She knocked like it was her house. 3 slow knocks. Calm. Controlled. The kind that carry a warning. I didn't move at first. I just stood in the kitchen, the back of my neck still burning from the quiet chaos upstairs, trying to process the fact that 5 minutes ago I had smiled at a half-naked man and casually told him his entire double life was about to implode. And now, apparently, the hammer had arrived. I opened the door, and there she was, his wife. Her name, I'd later learn, was Marla. Not the kind of name you forget once you hear it said the right way. She was taller than I expected, wearing a gray coat, hair tied back like she didn't have time for nonsense. In one hand, she held her phone. In the other, a small USB drive. She looked past me like she already knew the layout of my house. "Are they here?" she asked, like she was asking if my coffee machine worked. I nodded, silently stepping aside. She walked in without waiting for an invitation. We didn't need to speak. We both knew what this was. 2 strangers bound together by the same humiliating truth. The same betrayal. I followed her down the hallway as she moved with surgical precision. No hesitation, no noise. She stopped outside my bedroom door. From the other side came faint voices, still arguing. I could make out my wife's, tense and shrill, accusing him of being sloppy. I wanted to laugh. Sloppy? That's what she chose to be upset about? Marla looked at me once, her expression unreadable, and then raised her fist and pounded the door with 3 sharp knocks. Silence fell instantly. A second later, the door creaked open, and there he was again. Sweater guy? No shirt. Still wearing my socks. The moment he saw her, color drained from his face like someone had flipped a switch. "Oh," he muttered. She didn't give him time to explain. She pushed the USB into his chest. "Guess what's on here?" she said. "Audio. From your little performance. Sent to me by this man." She gestured to me without looking, who was kind enough to record it. "You left her speaker on, genius." He tried to speak. She cut him off. "No, save it. You'll need your breath to explain it to your mother, your boss, and whoever runs the HR department. I emailed it to all of them an hour ago. You're not just done here. You're done everywhere." He looked like he might vomit. My wife, meanwhile, stood frozen behind him, wrapped in a sheet like it could protect her from this reality. I should have felt something. Anger, triumph, sadness, but all I felt was a strange, hollow peace. Like I was standing on a frozen lake that had already cracked, watching the pieces drift apart beneath my feet. Marla turned to me. "I'm sorry about your house," she said quietly. "And your groceries." Then she turned back to them. "Finish dressing. You've got 20 minutes to get out. And don't take anything that isn't yours." She walked out just as calmly as she arrived. I didn't say anything either. I didn't have to. I closed the bedroom door behind me and walked back into the kitchen, finally taking the now half-melted ice cream and stuffing it angrily into the freezer. I should have been pacing, yelling, crying. But instead, I just stood there again, silent, breathing, empty, listening to the shuffling upstairs as they scrambled to pack like kids caught cheating on a test. 15 minutes later, they were gone. She didn't say a word to me on the way out. No apology. No, it's not what it looks like. Nothing. Just a hurried shuffle to the car while avoiding eye contact, clutching a tote bag and her phone. He didn't even look back. I locked the door behind them and leaned my forehead against it. And that's when I finally let the tears come. Not for her. Not for us. But for all the nights I spent thinking I wasn't enough. For all the quiet dinners, the hesitant touches, the endless conversations where I tried to ask if she was okay, and she brushed me off with a smile that wasn't real. For the man I had been, trying, giving, hoping. But those tears didn't last long. Because something strange happened next. A notification lit up my phone, an unknown number. And the message? "You're not the only one. She's done this before." The message just sat there on my screen, like a ghost waiting to be acknowledged. "You're not the only one. She's done this before." No name, no context, just those 10 words. But they hit harder than anything my wife had ever said to my face. I stared at it for a full minute, half convinced it was some kind of twisted prank. But then another message came through. Look familiar? It included a photo, grainy, dimly lit, taken from what looked like a bar or club. And there she was, my wife, Celeste, sitting close beside another man, leaning in too intimately, her hand resting on his thigh. I zoomed in, trying to breathe through the pressure building behind my eyes. It was dated 9 months ago. My stomach turned. 9 months ago, she told me she had gone on a yoga retreat for mental clarity. I had packed her suitcase, driven her to the airport, and waited at home like a puppy with a calendar, counting the days until she returned. And apparently, while I'd been sending her goodnight texts and folding our laundry, she was wrapped around someone else. I didn't respond right away. I couldn't. I sat on the couch for what felt like an hour, just holding my phone, trying to fit this new puzzle piece into the twisted landscape that used to be my marriage. Then I finally typed, "Who are you?" The reply came instantly. Her ex. We were together for 4 years. She cheated on me, too, with someone I thought was my friend. I blinked. My hands went numb. "She didn't just lie to you," he continued. "She collected men like keychains. You're not the first she used. You probably won't be the last unless someone stops her." I didn't know this man, but he clearly knew her. And the things he started sharing, names, dates, places, all lined up. Places she had claimed to be. Trips she had taken. Every single story she had fed me suddenly had a sinister mirror image. I asked him why he was telling me all of this. His answer? Because no one warned me. And I wish someone had. That hit me harder than I expected. I thanked him. Told him I was sorry he went through it too. Then, after a long pause, I asked the one question I was most afraid of. Was it always physical? He sent a voice message. I didn't want to open it. But I did. His voice was steady, slow. He said, "No. At first, it wasn't. That's the part that hurts the most. She didn't just betray bodies. She made you believe you were safe, loved, permanent. But all the while, she was studying the cracks. She was waiting for the moment she could slip through one." I put the phone down and buried my face in my hands. It wasn't just that she had cheated. It wasn't just that she had lied. It was that she had done it methodically, coldly, like it was part of a plan. I sat up slowly and looked around the room. Everything was still in its place. The framed photos, the books we never read, the blanket she always pretended was hers even though it was mine. But it all looked like a crime scene now, like props in a set I'd been duped into acting on. And that's when it hit me, the journal, the red leather one I had given her last week, the one she said she wanted for writing down her dreams. It was still sitting on her nightstand. She hadn't taken it when she left. I stood up and walked to the bedroom. The bed was still messy. The air still smelled faintly of her perfume, like guilt trying to wear a disguise. I picked up the journal and hesitated. I knew it was wrong to read it. But then again, she had rewritten the rules. She had shattered trust. So I opened it. The first page was blank. So was the second. But the third had a date and a single sentence. I think he suspects something. I need to be more careful. My mouth went dry. I turned the page. Eric is getting bold. He says he wants me to tell him. But I don't want the drama. Not yet. Another page. I caught myself smiling when Howard made me tea today. Why do I still feel guilty? He doesn't deserve this. But he also doesn't excite me anymore. I slammed the journal shut. My knees nearly gave out. She didn't just cheat. She chronicled it. Like a memoir of betrayal. Like it was her own twisted novel, and I was just a supporting character with a broken heart. I didn't sleep that night. But I did stay up writing something of my own. Not a journal. A plan. And trust me, read it. I'm not proud of what came next. But when you've been played like a fool in your own home, something inside you changes. And sometimes, the quiet ones fight back in ways no one sees coming. I didn't want revenge. I wanted understanding. That was the lie I kept telling myself as I stared at her journal. The one that held confessions she never meant for me to read. I had left it on the nightstand where I found it, but every word was burned into my brain. I'd memorized the ink loops in the sentence. He doesn't excite me anymore. I couldn't unsee the way she had tried to justify it. How she had written about me with pity, not malice. Like I was some pitiful old pet who followed her around too much, wagging his tail while she sneaked off to scratch someone else behind the ears. But understanding? That was gone now. The next day, I stayed home from work. Again, I told my manager I had the flu, and she sounded genuinely concerned, which made me feel even more hollow. She asked if I needed soup. I nearly cried. I told her no. I couldn't leave the house. Every corner of it held something she touched. The wine glass with lipstick she didn't bother scrubbing clean. The slipper she left half buried under the coffee table. Even the dent in the couch cushion where she used to sit, legs folded, laptop perched on her knees. That laptop. She hadn't taken it. I stood frozen for a long time, just staring at it from across the room. She usually kept it locked, password protected like Fort Knox. But it was right there. Open. Sleeping. I walked over. Tapped the trackpad. The screen lit up. No password prompt. No lock screen. Her Gmail was still open. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. I didn't want to look. I wanted to be above it. But some deep, desperate part of me whispered, if she's hidden this much, what else haven't you seen? I clicked the inbox. The first message was from a sender named A. Subject line, had a dream about you last night. I opened it. Inside was a short message. Your shoulders. Your mouth. The way you laugh when I say something inappropriate. You haunt me. I scrolled down. There were more. Dozens. Going back months. Not from Eric, the guy she got caught with. This was someone else. A was older, married, and from the looks of it, her former professor. There were messages about hotel rooms, secret conferences, even references to me, mocking ones, like I was some outdated relic. One message read, Howard seems like a gentle soul. I almost feel bad. Almost. I wanted to punch the screen. But instead, I just kept reading. And the deeper I went, the darker it got. There were messages from yet another man, someone saved only as M.T., who apparently lived in another state. They hadn't met in person yet, but from the photos and language, it was clear it wasn't innocent. She had built an entire parallel world of infidelity. One for every flavor, every mood. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't even just cheating. It was a pattern, a project, a lifestyle. And here I was, still making excuses for why she hadn't wanted to watch documentaries with me anymore. I snapped a screenshot of every email, every photo, every plan. Then I transferred them to a hidden folder on my computer. labeled it insurance. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I needed to feel like I had control over something. I closed the laptop and sat back on the couch. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about all the nights she kissed me goodnight, knowing full well she had someone else whispering her name an hour before. And now I couldn't stop wondering how many of those kisses were just guilt disguised as affection. It was then, in that cracked, gray silence, that my phone buzzed again. It was Marla, the woman whose husband I exposed. "You okay?" she texted. I stared at it. I didn't know how to answer. I didn't even know what okay meant anymore. But before I could reply, she sent another message. "I think we should meet." I hesitated. My chest tightened. Then came a third message. "I have something else you need to see. Something about her. It's worse than you think." I blinked. Worse than this? What else could possibly be hiding in the shadows of this woman I thought I knew? I texted back, "Tell me where." And as I put the phone down, something in me shifted. Not in a triumphant way. Not in some, "I'm going to rise from the ashes" moment. No, it was smaller, quieter, but real. It was the first moment I realized I didn't love her anymore. I just didn't know what came next. But Marla did. And whatever she had to show me, it was going to blow this open wider than I ever imagined. The cafe Marla chose was almost offensively cheerful. Yellow walls, chalkboard menus, fairy lights in the windows. The kind of place where people drink oat milk lattes and pretend the world doesn't have teeth. I got there early, took a corner seat by the window, and tried to look normal. That's harder than it sounds when your life feels like a shattered snow globe. I didn't recognize her at first when she walked in. She looked different than she had that night. Not colder, just sharper. Focused. She wore a dark coat, hair tied up neatly, and carried a laptop bag over her shoulder like it was a weapon. She spotted me, gave a small nod, and sat across without ceremony. "Thanks for coming," she said, and before I could respond, she added, "What I'm about to show you. I wish someone had shown me earlier too." She opened her laptop. No small talk. No coffee orders. Just a screen, a folder, and a file named Cherrywood. I asked what it meant. She didn't answer. She clicked it open. Inside were 3 videos. All grainy, time-stamped, each one labeled with a different month. She clicked the earliest. It started in a dim hotel room. Shaky phone camera footage. A man was talking to someone behind the camera. His voice was casual, amused. And then, from off-screen, I heard her. Celeste. Laughing. Teasing. It wasn't just the sound of a woman being unfaithful. It was the sound of someone rehearsed. Experienced. Like this wasn't new for her. I looked away. Marla paused the video. "She recorded these," she said flatly. "Not him. Her. Every single one. Then sent them to different men over time." I swallowed hard. Why would she do that? Marla didn't blink. Leverage. Or maybe just ego. Maybe she liked knowing she had things on people. Or that they had things on her. Either way, she kept them organized. On a flash drive. Hidden in a hollowed-out piece of cherry wood in her old apartment. I leaned back, stunned. "Wait, how did you?" "She used to be my best friend," Marla said, her voice flat but quiet. "Before she seduced my husband. Before she burned every bridge behind her like it was a game." It took me a second to process what she just said. "She? Celeste and you were friends?" She nodded. "College. Roommates. I brought her into our friend group. Introduced her to Eric. The first betrayal happened while I was still defending her character to everyone else." My pulse skipped. "So why are you helping me now?" Marla finally looked at me, and for a second, the sharp edges melted just a little. "Because I spent years telling myself I had imagined it all. That I was the crazy one. And you looked just like I did, back then." Shell-shocked. Hoping the truth was smaller than it actually is. I didn't know what to say. For the first time in this whole ordeal, I felt like someone actually saw the version of me that was unraveling inside. Not just the pitiful guy who got cheated on, but the one who still wondered what made him cheatable. She closed the laptop. "I have copies," she said. "I've kept them in a cloud drive. Password protected. I used to want to burn them, but now? I think they're evidence. And people like her don't stop unless they're exposed." I asked, "So what are you saying? You want to go public with it?" Marla's lips tightened. "No, I want to give you a choice. Either bury it and try to rebuild whatever's left, or use it. Tell the truth. Take her off the pedestal. Because if you don't, she'll find another soft, kind man like you, and she'll start all over again." It was hard to hear, but I knew she wasn't wrong. She slid me a small slip of paper with the cloud login and password. Her fingers were trembling slightly as she did, but her expression didn't change. As she stood to leave, she paused. "One more thing," she said. "You should check your bank account." I frowned. "What?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. She did it to me too. Transferred everything out days before the breakup. Changed beneficiaries. Blocked cards. She'll bleed you dry and call it self-care. Then she left. I sat there for a few minutes, unable to move. The air in the cafe felt thicker, too warm. I took out my phone, opened my banking app, and logged in. My checking account balance was half what it had been 2 days ago. My joint savings? Completely gone. Frozen. Blocked. And there, at the top of the recent activity feed, was a wire transfer. To an account I didn't recognize. Labeled under a name I hadn't seen before. But I would. Because later that night, after digging through old paperwork and voicemail notifications I had ignored during the chaos, I found something else. A rental lease. Signed in both their names. Her and the man from the hallway. Dated 2 weeks before I ever caught them. She wasn't cheating. She had been moving out of my life in secret, piece by piece, while I was still asking her how her day went. There's a strange kind of silence that follows the realization you were erased while still standing in your own home. Not pushed out, not yelled at, just quietly, methodically erased. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling fan I installed myself 3 summers ago, the one she complained spun too fast. It was off now. Like me. No motion. No hum. Just the sound of a man lying in a house that no longer belonged to him. The lease in their names sat on the nightstand, printed and signed, complete with move-in date, address, and even a note in the margin that read, "Paint swatches. She likes the lighter cherry." I guess I was now living in the darker version of her life. It wasn't just the betrayal anymore. It was the scope of it. The strategy. She didn't just cheat. She replaced me. Silently. Efficiently. I had been holding on to a marriage that had already been hollowed out. The foundation quietly ripped up and rebuilt somewhere else while I was still making dinner and pretending eye contact meant love. The next morning, I went looking for things that were no longer mine. Her closet was half empty. Not in the obvious way, the hangers were still full. But her real things were gone. Her journals. Her laptop. The second pair of house keys. Jewelry I'd given her for our anniversary. Even the little trinket box from our honeymoon in Oregon vanished. She'd taken them weeks ago, long before I found her in our bedroom with him. I hadn't even noticed. That was the part that stung the most. How long had I been a ghost? I walked through the house like a stranger in a museum of bad memories. Everything felt staged, frozen in time. On the fridge, the last grocery list we made together, almond milk, lemons, that herbal tea she pretended to like. It was like reading notes left by someone who had already packed their exit bags. Then I saw the calendar. On the back of the pantry door, there was a circle drawn in red marker. July 12th, final clean break. That was before I ever caught her. Before the speaker incident. Before the video. Before Eric smirked in my hallway and told me she was his. She had scheduled my erasure. I felt something rise in my chest. Not rage. Not despair. Something worse. Clarity. Cold, heavy clarity. It was no longer about pain. It was about understanding exactly who I had shared my life with. The kind of person who could sit beside me on the couch while texting her exit strategy. Who could tell me, "I love you," on a Tuesday and wire money out of our accounts on Wednesday. Who could cry about stress and then go test out mattress firmness with someone else 24 hours later. I took a photo of that calendar. Then I walked back to the kitchen, opened the drawer where we kept old bills, and began tearing it apart. I was looking for anything that would help me understand how deep this went. And sure enough, beneath a stack of expired coupons and forgotten receipts, I found another envelope. It had no name, just the word "if." Inside was a letter. Her handwriting, looser than in her journal. The tone smug. "If you ever find this, then I guess I underestimated you. Or maybe I just didn't care anymore. You were never supposed to. That's the point. I built this escape plan in pieces, not out of hatred, but out of inevitability. You stopped asking me questions years ago, Howard. You let me drift. And I learned that sometimes, if no one pulls you back, maybe they never really wanted to." I read it twice. Then 3 more times. She blamed me. Not outright. Not angrily. But she placed my passiveness on the table like a final piece of evidence. As if all of this, The infidelity, the financial betrayal, the staged exit, was somehow a natural consequence of me not being bold enough, not curious enough, not alive enough. I nearly tore the letter in half. But I didn't. Instead, I walked to my office and opened the folder Marla had given me access to. The videos, the screenshots, the audio recordings, evidence that I wasn't her first victim. And from the looks of it, not her last. That's when I realized something I hadn't considered before. I wasn't the only one she'd written letters to. Because in one of the files Marla uploaded, buried beneath the images and saved messages, there was a document titled Exit Scripts. Inside it, templates, messages for how to leave men, how to sound regretful without apologizing, how to twist financial betrayal into self-preservation. There were drafts for at least 4 different men, sentences that mirrored the words in my own if letter, slightly reworded, but clearly repurposed. This wasn't heartbreak. It was her playbook. She had rehearsed this ending, polished it, and now she was living a new version of the same lie, just with a different name on the pillow beside her. I sat back in my chair, pulse pounding in my ears, vision blurry. It was never about me, but now it was about what I would do next. Because ghosts don't just haunt houses. Sometimes, they come back with the truth and burn the script down in front of an audience. I didn't tell anyone what I was planning. Not Marla, not my coworkers, not even my brother, who'd been checking in on me every few days like I was a patient recovering from a car accident. I kept it all to myself. Like a fragile flame, I wasn't ready to let anyone else see. What Celeste had taken from me wasn't just money or stability, it was my voice, my ability to react. For weeks I had been drifting through other people's decisions, other people's choices. I was tired of being the man people pitted in silence. So I created something she couldn't ignore. It started with a dinner invitation. I knew where they lived now, the place she and Eric had moved into. I didn't even need to snoop. The address was on the lease. I mailed them a formal invitation. Printed, elegant, titled, Closure. No threats, no dramatic statements. Just a note asking if we could have one final meal together to put things to rest. I signed it politely and included a reservation card for a quiet Italian place downtown. The kind of restaurant she always said made her feel expensive. I expected them to ignore it. But 3 days later, I got a reply. A simple RSVP card tucked into my mailbox. Checked yes. That's when the real work began. I reserved a private room at the restaurant. Paid extra for discretion. I arrived early and handed the maitre d' a sealed envelope, asking him to bring it to our table 20 minutes into the meal. Then I sat and waited. She arrived first. Wore green. Her power color. Same perfume. Same confident posture. But her eyes darted more than usual, like she wasn't sure if this was a setup or an olive branch. Eric followed. Arrogant as ever, still convinced the world owed him applause for existing. He smiled like we were old friends. I didn't return it. Howard, she said, sitting across from me. I wasn't sure if this was real. It's real, I said. I just wanted to say a few things. To your faces. The waiter brought wine. We ordered. The usual pleasantries danced across the table. Forced, brittle, laced with tension. Celeste mentioned something about starting a podcast. Eric joked about teaching yoga. I nodded through it all, letting them talk. I barely touched my food. Then, right on cue, the envelope arrived. He placed it between our wine glasses and stepped away. Celeste looked at it suspiciously. What's this? Just something I think you should read together, I said calmly. Eric opened it. Inside were 2 pages. One was a printed transcript of a message Eric had left, voicemail, on another woman's phone, sent just 3 days ago. It wasn't graphic, but it was unmistakable. The second page? A photo of that woman. Not Celeste. Not even close. Eric's face drained faster than my bank account. What is this? Celeste said, looking from the page to him. Eric tried to speak. Fumbled. Then said the worst possible thing. It was before we moved in together. Celeste stared at him. It was 3 days ago. You told me you were picking up your mom from the airport. He opened his mouth again, but this time, wisely, said nothing. And then I said it. I didn't come here to argue. I just wanted to return the favor. Celeste turned to me, wide-eyed. What favor? I smiled for the first time in weeks. You showed me who you really are. So I thought I'd show you who he really is. She stood up so fast her chair scraped across the floor. You're lying. Read the voicemail again, I said. I can forward the original file if you want. It's clearer with the background noise. She stormed out, envelope in hand, Eric scrambling behind her like a man chasing his own shadow. I stayed at the table, alone, finishing my untouched glass of wine. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival, like something inside me had finally sat up and exhaled. But that wasn't the end. Because when I walked out of the restaurant that night, there was a woman waiting near the valet stand. Short, dark coat, arms crossed. Watching, she stepped forward as I approached. "You're Howard." I blinked. "Yeah. Do I know you?" She didn't smile. "No, but I know them." She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. Eric, with her, holding hands, laughing, happy. "I'm his ex," she said. "The one from the voicemail. He told me Celeste was just some messy transition. He said she didn't matter." My jaw tightened. I said nothing. "I thought you should know," she said. "They've been doing this to people for years. Separately. And now together." I swallowed hard. "Why are you telling me now?" She looked me in the eye. "Because I think you're the only one who ever tried to end the cycle." She handed me her contact and left. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I realized something. This wasn't just my story. Celeste and Eric weren't just cheaters. They were serial architects of heartbreak. And they had left a trail. But I wasn't just going to follow it. I was going to light it up and finally let the world see what they'd been hiding in the shadows all along. The morning after the dinner, I woke up to something I hadn't felt in months: stillness. Not the kind that comes from giving up, or the kind you feel when grief pulls you under. No, this was different. It was the absence of noise. The silence that follows the final scene of a long, painful story. I opened the window and let in the breeze. The house, for once, didn't feel haunted. I'd spent so much time asking myself how I didn't see it coming. How I missed the clues. How I let her slip through the cracks while still setting the dinner table every night. But I realized that wasn't the point anymore. The point was, I survived it. I stood through the storm. I found truth. I faced people who wanted to humiliate me, and I walked away without screaming, without stooping to their level. That day, I cleaned the house. Not like I was scrubbing away pain, but like I was preparing it for someone new me. I boxed up everything that had her fingerprints on it. The journals, the photos, the cheap throw pillows she pretended were vintage. I set them by the door. I didn't burn them. I didn't shred them. I simply let them go. Then I made a call. Not to her. To a travel agent. "Pick somewhere," I said, "anywhere quiet. No Wi-Fi. No expectations." 3 days later, I was in a small cabin in the Pacific Northwest. It rained most of the time, but I didn't mind. I took long walks. I wrote in a notebook. I read an entire novel cover to cover, not because I had to, but because I could. And that's where I had my last conversation with Celeste. No drama. No fighting. Just a short call. "I know what you did," I said. "I know about the emails. The fake bank transfers. The exit plans." Silence. "I'm not calling to fight," I continued. "I just want to say, I hope you figure yourself out before you try to love anyone else. Because what you're doing, it isn't love. It's hunger dressed up as charm." She didn't reply, just hung up. And that was it. I thought I'd feel empty, but I didn't. I felt light. Weeks passed. I came home. The locks were changed. The furniture was rearranged. The old wedding photos were replaced with framed pictures of landscapes I hadn't even seen yet. I adopted a second dog, named him Chance. And then, something surprising happened. I started laughing again. Not the polite, shaky kind of laugh you fake for coworkers, but the real, uncontrollable kind that hits you when you realize you're no longer afraid to be alone. I laughed while doing dishes, while dancing with the dogs, while reading horrible fantasy novels in bed. Because I finally understood. I didn't need closure from her. I gave it to myself. And now, I'm okay. Better than okay. I'm rebuilding. Not to prove anything. Not to show her what she lost. But because I like the man I'm becoming. He's softer, slower, smarter, and no longer begging to be seen. Thanks for watching this emotional roller coaster here on Reddit Confessions. If you've ever gone through something that changed you forever, quietly, painfully, or unexpectedly, share it in the comments. What moment helped you begin again? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stick around. Every story here reminds us, even when things fall apart, we're never alone in putting the pieces back together. See you in the next confession.